All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. We have finally reached the end of Barry Jenkins' soon to be proclaimed, if it's not been proclaimed, a masterpiece already by the right people. It's a masterpiece. In this day of binging, it's real easy to just try to blow through things and, be first or whatever. And it's fine to binge sometimes, but there's some things that really benefit from watching slowly, taking it all in, and processing something. Because when you binge something, most of the time, what I feel like in the end is you're either overloaded or you feel nothing. You feel empty. And this is the kind of show that you want to say. I usually say savor, but this isn't savoring. It's processing. It's taking it all in. And I'm sorry it took me this long to get here to the end. But I really, after episode 9, I really wanted to take a minute, take a step back, get ready for the last episode, because 9 was so devastating and powerful and emotional. I wanted to really go into this ready to watch this, not knowing how this is going to end. And it surprised me how they went about it, because I knew that it was called Mabel, that it was going to be dealing, showing us more about Cora's mother. Before we get all into all that, let's take care of the usual YouTube garbage. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel and you are not a subscriber and you're new here, welcome. Please become a subscriber to the channel if you like it. We are, oh my gosh, you guys, we are like something like 50 subscribers away from 2,000 subscribers. So that part is really exciting, because 2,000 to small YouTubers might as well be a million. So also hit the bell for all notifications, share the video with people that you think will like this, all that stuff. So if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. If this is your first episode, video we're watching, we've got all the other ones. So go ahead and go back and rewatch those. If you're not new to the channel, of course, welcome back. Glad to see you all here. Again, because you guys in the comment section have been so amazing. In fact, I've got to pause this real quick. I only paused it because I have to bring up, if you're in the comments section, if you're leaving a comment, go check out the comments from M. Worthy, who have been leaving the best comments for this show. They are very informative. He's got links to other things that you might want to check out if you are liking, what we're talking about here. He goes into a great detail. There's a lot to unpack in his comments, and I want to thank you personally from me. This is one of the main reasons why I do this, all right, is the community that we build through whatever show or movie we're talking about, or game or comic. It's about reaching people who love the stuff that I love, that we all love, and talking about it as a community. And I want you all to know, because I always try to hit everybody's comments. And so check his comments out. I'm sure there's going to be some comments in here that are worth checking out. So with that all out of the way, let's dive into Mabel, the final chapter in this masterpiece. And just again, how the visual storytelling in here, and just the weird dreamlike nightmare hell. A lot of times when I'm watching this, I feel like these characters are in hell. Like, I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in that any of this kind of stuff. That's just my personal thing. I don't begrudge anybody who believes whatever you believe, just as long as you don't try to push it on other people. But as far as the storytelling, though, looking at these characters, I just feel like this is like this nightmare hellscape, but it's what really happened. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about that, when you think of hell, like if there is or was or whatever, I feel like that's like this kind of situation is hell, and that you're just, but you're alive, you know. And I was thinking about how in the situation that slaves found themselves in, how they could find grace in this hellscape. How in all of this awfulness that the white men created, so that they wouldn't have to work their own fields. Man, just still thinking about that kind of shit just really fucking chaps my ass. Pardon my French. But that while they were sitting on their fat asses, drinking mint julep, watching big fat asses with whips take care of their fields as they whip and abuse people to, pockets, as they train other slaves to whip and punish their own people. In the midst of all this, a whole new culture is created. A culture that is appropriated now, to this day. They couldn't, people can't even leave that alone. But still, it's theirs. It's being on a plantation and having and being able to learn a new language, teaching yourself to write, educating yourself. And like I said, creating a culture that is still, it is just getting bigger every day, really. Expanding out as time goes on. And being able to come from that, never giving up. Because I always think about, and we've mentioned this in other videos, I always wondered, why, when you hear these things, you just want the story to be different. You want the story to be that they rose up and killed all the white people that had them in chains. Unless you're a racist prick and then you're watching this the white men are heroes. Ugh. But that's just not how it, you see when you watch this and you see how the mental breakdown of a culture, of a people, the fear that's instilled, the horrors, that the repercussions of any kind of rebellion, how swiftly they're cut down, and how the punishment never fits the crime. Crime as a slave, being a human being's acting as if you want to have freedom, acting as if you want to be considered a human being is a crime. And still somehow being able to get up every day and keep going, and now, we think about, white people think about, where did we come from? When you think about where white people come from, they think about, the pilgrims. Oh, the pilgrims who were leaving, they were being chased because of religious stuff and other things back in Europe. They had to get out and make their own way, and so they come here and they immediately start, killing Indians, the Native Americans. So they're running from oppression to just to start oppression. Smallpox in the blankets, taking everything that's not nailed down. It's like this line in, I was thinking about the line in the show Lost, and it's just a weird line. It means nothing other than the line of when the castaways are confronted with the people that live there, and he's like, when you come over to somebody's house, you just put your foot up on the table. That's what I feel like white people did when they came to America. what would be known as America. They just came here and they just like they took their dirty feet and they put it all over the Native Americans' table. And they just said, "This is mine now." Because God wills it so. We made it this far. It means it's ours. And so we took everything. And then once it was finally established, once they fought back enough to start building towns and little cities and made a community of their own that was stretching down the East Coast, then you get slaves. I mean, it's like, yeah, they worked. There were people that worked after they killed and they took things. They worked, and there was like I remember. I love when people bring up there were white slaves too. They were called indentured serv. It's not the same fucking thing, you stupid crackers. Because indentured servitude is a choice. Now you'll say, well, some families, yes, there are always going to be a few things that are wildly unique. Some people did find themselves in situations that was almost slave-like. But the thing was, is they were still considered human beings. We weren't referred to as it, or things, or property, really. Your property was their property, but you weren't anyone's property. You were working someone's property. You weren't the property. These fucking idiots, these ignorant dickheads that think that that's the same thing. Because they want to make sure that, everything's always the narcissism behind that. So it's bad enough that you come here, and that's how we think of it, though. That's how a lot of white people think of it. Manifest destiny and all this stuff. This is where we came from. Oh, the struggle. Oh, the struggle. Oh, we might have been killed by bears or Native Americans. That's called survival of the fittest, and I don't mean that like it's not manifest destiny. If you live, you got lucky, we're lucky. Putting people into slavery is a choice. Not being able, like, not having enough people in your own family to come help you pick cotton. If we were truly such, wonderful creatures of God, we'd have figured out how to do it ourselves. Rather than enslave an entire country so that we could live cushy lives. It makes you wonder, what would the story of the African be? They could have come here. They could have, built their own ships, found their own ways here, migrated, who knows, and been able to join. I know. See, now I'm living in my own little fantasy. That's the story I'd like to tell. That's the history I'd like to have happen. But this is the reality. The reality is what was happening on this show. But I still love thinking that, white people, consider their struggle to be, we fought for all of it, and now we finally got this great place, which is debatable. While the story of the slave is one of this nightmare hellscape, yet somehow they build a culture that is copied and sought after by all kinds of people that want to make money off of it. But it's still theirs. For the most part, some of it, if it's not being appropriate. And you still find today that an African American, a black person, however you want to put it, is still living in this kind of, you can only go so far as long as the white people allows it. There's still this line. And we see it more and more, especially since 2016. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't there before. I'm saying that it's taken some of us white folks to have someone like Trump in the office of the president to see how bad things really still are. And that the lines there are still there. And it's sickening. And I know we're not talking about the show, but this is where I go. Like, welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, this is what happens. Because when we talk about a show or a movie, when you watch something, you take it in, you feel something. If it's good, if it's not, it's just popcorn. So what I do is I talk about what it makes me think of, what it makes me feel like, how it makes me like how I want to feel. It makes me think of the world. It makes me think of all these things. And then I got to get it out. Because when we sit around and we talk about movies or shows to each other, this is what we do. We don't sit around just talking about the blocking and the pacing and the tone. Yeah, those are all important things when you talk about, if you want to review something just standardly. But when we sit in our room and we talk to each other, we talk about it like this. And so this is how I review things like this. So I apologize if we're not getting right to it. But I really enjoyed watching. I mean, enjoy is, again, quotation marks here. I liked learning about Mabel's backstory and how tragic and just, I should have seen it coming. I should have seen it coming. The whole time Ridgway and Cora, talk about Mabel ran off. Mabel was this, this enigmatic slave who disappeared and no one can find her. She's, out living some magical life, that away from the slave hunters, and she got away, and Ridgway makes it he's in his own personal hell, letting this one escaped slave haunt him. He can't move on until he knows where Mabel is. And Cora's haunted because her mother left her as a child, and she's very upset about it. Rightfully so when you're a kid. Ridgway, on the other hand, he's just a fucking miserable prick. Who's, never was able to get out from under his father's shadow. But the thing is that he was trying to rise above his own, I don't know. Ridgway's issues are, he has issues upon issues. And he died unfinished. Like, he did not get what he wanted at all. He maybe thinks he did in a way, but he didn't. Not to me, anyway. But the reality of all this, of what really happened, is told. And we start with a woman named Polly who's giving birth. And it's a difficult birth. The baby is born stillborn. And her, he's not married to her, but the other slave known as Moses, who's kind of like the head slave. I don't know what they call them. Runs and tells the master, what happened and that they need a doctor, and they bury the baby, and, they all pick double cotton. But because of this, because she had a baby, it wasn't born, because it was stillborn, she still got the milk, and they hear about how another slave had twins, and I think she died. And so they want to use Polly to suckle the young, uh, except they use the term bucks, which is another whole thing. Breeding stock. That's just a whole other disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Like if the slaves had refused to, let's say, give birth, to have sex, to procreate, if they said we're not going to breed children into this life, what would they have done? Would that mean forced sexual assault on both parties, really? Making someone have sex with another person so that they could breed, and then they would have to, what? Take the female away, keep her locked up so that she would give birth, and then immediately take the baby away, and then they'd have to find somebody to raise the baby so that, like it. This is just a disgusting. This is absolutely horrifying. Literally treating people like cattle. They were already cattle, but when you put it like this, like bucks and studs and all this stuff, like breed, like you talk about a horse or a like a steer. And you know that there's so many people that still think this way. There's I wonder what those people think, like the ones that are born that came from the old plantation families. We used to have all this stuff. It used to all be ours, man. We used to have all these people. It was all taken away from us by the northern aggression. We could be sitting on our fat asses. Well, Mabel goes to help Polly. Sorry. Mabel goes to, it's like a quick segue back in. Mabel helps Polly nurse the children, the babies. But she knows that Polly is unwell. She almost died. She lost her baby. Now she's suckling someone else's kids. And she comes to the delusion that they're her babies. And Moses thinks basically the same thing. And it's like this, they're living in a fantasy. Because they lost something. And it's a very, it broke her. And he's in denial. And they think, oh, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have these kids, it's gonna be a whole great thing. And Mabel has to throw the bucket of water on her head, which is they're not your babies. And as soon as they can stand upright, they're gonna be sold in the river. And it's a brutal truth, but it's the truth. It's the reality that what you're having right now, this moment of, this is your child. They're not. They belong to another plantation. You are just a tool being used. And that these kids are just pawns. Now, this just leads to, watching Moses walk around with the thing in his mouth and the little toothpick or whatever in the whip just is so sad. It's so sad. You could be like angry about it, but it's just sad. It's so depressing to see that, because a person has to be molded into that this is the only way. You want to have an okay life as a slave, this is what you have to do. And to be broken down in that way to where this is the acceptable way of living is just, it's awful. Well, he goes home and finds that Polly, yes, she has killed herself and the two babies because, well, the reality must have set in. And that thought, because she was already mentally unstable because of everything. I mean, I don't know how anybody be mentally stable in this situation. Any of it. I try to think about what would I be like, and I'd be like, man, Like, I really do try to put myself in that position. Like, what if all white people were the slaves? Like, what if you woke up in this place every day, down in the South, and your life meant nothing? And I know I probably have gone crazy. I'd have probably gotten myself killed. So it's not, it's knowing that she did this. It's it's horrifying, but I wasn't surprised that it happened. I mean, you kind of see it coming. And then what happens? Moses gets punished. Moses gets, I think he's dead, right? He gets tied to a post, whipped by the guy who becomes when we see at the very beginning of the series, he's taken over his position. So this is how that guy got that position, by whipping the guy that was the former boss of the slaves. And then once he's whipped in front of everyone, he's tied to the post where he just dies. If he's not dead, he's mostly dead. Mostly dead. Sorry, I was a Princess Bride thing. And that's just, and then how people, it's just so common. Like the dead horse. Am I thinking of something? Oh, I'm thinking of something else that I was watching where there was just a dead horse in the street. And it was just so common that people just walk past it like it's nothing. Which is another crazy thought about that time period. The numbness of how much death people saw back then. That, a man just laying there. And I'm sure there were probably repercussions if they acknowledged it, but still. And so this you could see, like, how Cora and Caesar saw the slave burned alive in front of them, was their moment of, that's it, we're fucking out of here. Rather die. This was Mabel's. Mabel cracked. Like this, it was just, she's in the cabin, washing down the floors of the blood, having those flashes of the bodies of her, Polly, and the babies. And she just goes, done. I'm fucking done. Gets up, does not even think about it, and just starts walking off into the woods. Now, just like except, Cora and Caesar had a bit more of a plan. Not really, but like, they thought about it. They had their moment of like, oh, we're done. I've got to go. If Caesar's like, I'm out of here. You want to come with me? This is a little more thought. Not much, but a little. And Mabel gets all the way to the swamp. And this is where the story changes. Because Cora went through this same thing. She saw a snake in the water and she kept going. She didn't hesitate. They just kept going. Because I remember thinking about that episode and going, man, there's snakes in that water. And sure enough, there was a snake. And again, in this situation, except Mabel finally realizes what she's done. She kind of comes out of this fugue that she's in. And remembers Cora. She did not just abandon her child. She was like, oh God. And she has that, I could push on and just keep going, and probably be caught. Or I go back. And so she starts to go back, and then she's bit by the snake. And she dies right there. And that's why no one knows where she went and how she got away. Because she didn't get away. She died in the swamp, poisoned by a snake, and just probably sank into the swamp, eaten by fish and whatever. It's a horrible, horrible way to, sad reality that she didn't get away. Ridgway didn't need to spend his whole life haunted by this. But it doesn't Hollywoodize this. It doesn't give us that. No, she's in Chicago or wherever, or somewhere, living that, like living the life of a free slave. She went the way of many other people, and she died trying to escape, even though she was coming back, I think. And that's just, again, the horrifying reality of it all. And I'm so proud of Barry Jenkins for, and I know this is like, but this is the story and everything that it's based on, right? They change things in stuff all the time to fit whatever they want to tell. Like if somebody could have given them, we can't end it like that. But he stayed true to, because I don't know if this is how it was in the book, but I think it was the best way to end it, was that there are no just clean, clear endings. There is no the fantasy of just she got away. And having that hard truth in there, and the way that he pulled it off, just brilliant. Because we have too many stories that are just clean and nice, and things get wrapped up, and everybody's happy when they leave the theater, and you can move on with your life 20 minutes after you leave the theater, or after you turn off Netflix or whatever. But that's the way that he chose to do this is amazing, and Mabel's story is just as sad and but important. And so we jump to Cora now, and she's in the tunnel with Molly, and the tunnel comes out, the end of the railroad comes out to a cave entrance, and she finds like an abandoned farm. And this moment of when Molly tells her that she picked up the seeds, and she gets the seeds back, and it was just such a emotional moment for Cora, and I think for the audience, because I was very upset because I was following these seeds around like anybody else, this important legacy, but then, like, as as if to needing to let the past go. Not all the way, but I mean, she's been trying to hold on to this. Like like the thought of her mother being escaped and free, and trying to find the answer to where'd she go? Why did you leave me? To finally getting the seeds back and realizing, like, there's a plot of land here. I have to just put these seeds in the ground and move on with my life. Now maybe there's, I want to hear all how people disagree with me on this. It's fine, because that's just how I see it. We all watch things differently. We all see things differently. I want to know what you guys think about that. I feel like they're in the ground. She did what she had to. She took her names, what she was like, basically like what inheritance from her mother, and she finally gave it a home, whether it grows or not. And it's like a way for her to just, I have to move forward. Which is where, her and Molly get to the road, and they find Ollie coming down the road, which I couldn't tell if he was white or black for a second because of the distance, and I was just going, oh God, please don't let this end. Like, he pulls a gun, and there's another couple of guys in the back, and where are y'all going? But Ollie is a man who's meeting some people in Missouri, down in St. Louis, and they're heading off to California. And even then, like, the distrust I felt for Ollie. I'm mostly, they're like, are you kind? He's like, most times I am. And the cautiousness of, they hear the story, and the cautiousness that they feel, like, you can see on her face of, like, getting into this, wagon and going off to California. And all the, possibilities of badness happening along the way. But this is that glimmer of hope, of freedom. In, you know, in some way, Ridgway's not chasing her anymore. And this last moment here of just, it's not a clean ending, but there is a glimmer of hope. And it does feel like she's putting, she'll never be able to completely get away from it, like what happened. It'll, you know, but I mean, the symbolism of planting the seeds and being with Molly at least, and having her own kind of surrogate daughter and creating her own new story, and that she, you know, she did get away. And they didn't, you know, play up any of the Underground Railroad stuff anymore. And it's just one of these shows that I want to read the book now. And it's, I don't know how many people are talking about this show. I haven't looked it up. I know of only one other person that's talking about this. I'm sure there's plenty, but if you know, we're talking about episode 10, so it's like obviously you've either watched all of my reviews of it or you've only watched this one. It doesn't really matter, but there's not a lot of shows that have real importance and impact. There's so much just cookie cutter garbage out there. And I'm really happy to have talked about this. And I'm really happy that I watched something that made me feel, even if it wasn't stuff that I wanted to feel, it was stuff I needed to feel. It was stuff that I needed to think about, because we have to keep remembering, and I keep talking about this, we can't allow ourselves to forget these things. Our history, our collective history as human beings is important. And I know it's cliche, you know, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. But it's true, it's said for a reason. And the longer we get away from things, the more the people who control things will try to make history their own. They will try to write and say it, because I didn't learn this in school. I didn't learn all this in school. I knew about slavery in school. I knew about the Civil War in school, but there was this kind of fantasy around the education of whoops, there's a train coming by right now. Kind of funny that talking about a show that's called the Underground Railroad, and then a train comes blasting by right at the end. But in the education system, they sugarcoated all this. Like we watched movies like The Color Purple and shows like Roots and things like that, and that's how a lot of people got some kind of education into slavery. And that's not how we should, you know, like we need to educate ourselves on our own past and realize the real stories of how things really went down. Because given the chance, the people in charge will tell their version of events. And that's how you get so many ignorant people believing whatever comes out of some orange-faced asswipe's mouth. There's some morons with the name of Gates and Cruz and Green and Carlson get to feed the public, keep feeding the public their ignorance and telling these lies and creating a fiction so that people never ever hear the real stories. And they keep living in their ignorance. This is a story that's going to stick with me for a really long time. And I hope it sticks with everybody else too. And I hope you guys will recommend this show to as many people as you can, because it's important. This is actually important television. And Barry Jenkins is a fucking genius. And I can't wait to see what he's going to do next. So that's the end of this series. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it as much as I liked getting a lot of this pushed into my brain and all the thoughts coming out of my mouth hole. And if you liked it, I'm happy that we you enjoyed listening to me talk about this. If you didn't, you know. So if you liked this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. If you hated everything I just said and you wished that you'd never heard of my channel or me and wished you'd never listened to any of this, well, you can look right here. We'll do we'll rewind it about 41 minutes into the past here. Anybody who wants to remember this, look away. And we are about to give all those ignorant pricks a new, more pleasant memory. You just watched Fast and Furious 9. It was just as comforting as you thought it would be. Have a great day, everybody.